The news that the US President Joe Biden is standing aside as a candidate in November's presidential election. Last night, Mr. Biden said that it had been the greatest honour of his life to serve as president, but that he believed it was in the best interests of my party and the country for him to quit the race. Now, it follows weeks of speculation and growing pressure from leading Democrats for him to stand aside after a disastrous performance in a TV debate against Donald Trump. There's been a wave of reaction from figures across the political spectrum in the last few hours. Bill Clinton, the former US president, and his wife Hillary have paid tribute to President Biden, saying he stood up for America time and time again. Another former US president, Barack Obama, added his praise, writing that Mr. Biden has been one of America's most consequential presidents, as well as a dear friend and partner to me. Mr. Biden served as Mr. Obama's vice president, of course, for 8 years. Donald Trump gave a very different verdict, saying he was not fit to run for president and is certainly not fit to serve. Well, the Republican candidate and former president said he would win November's election and make America great again. Shortly after making the announcement, Mr. Biden endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democratic candidate for president. She said she intends to earn and win the nomination. Mr. Biden's move upends November's election, which had been all set for a rematch between him and Mr. Trump. Our US editor Sarah Smith can take us through how we got to this point.
When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America, and we still are.
Joe Biden's age was already a huge concern, even before he launched his campaign for re-election.
Let's finish this job. I know we can.
But his team shrugged it off.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice.
He confidently challenged Donald Trump to a debate, thinking it would boost his support. It was a total disaster that set off panic inside his party.
With the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
He tried to jog into a rally the next day, but soon gave up. A stronger performance here wasn't enough to reassure voters that he's up to the job.
I give you my word as a Biden, I would not be running again if I didn't believe with all my heart and soul I can do this job. Because quite frankly, the stakes are too high.
Because of the high stakes, every stumble, like falling over a sandbag on stage last June, caused alarm. Despite the slips and the spills, the Biden campaign dismissed as bedwetters anyone who said concerns about his fitness could lose him the election. He hoped the odd gag could kill the problem.
The 2024 election is in full swing. And yes, age is an issue. I'm a grown man running against a 6-year-old.
A vigorous performance in his State of the Union address in January silenced the critics within his own party for a while.
Here's the simple truth. You can't love your country only when you win.
But Republicans seized on and shared every moment. Like standing frozen among dancing people, looking lost and confused while meeting other world leaders, or having to be led off stage by Barack Obama at a party fundraiser. Under extreme pressure, the president knew he couldn't afford any more mistakes, as he then said this at a NATO summit.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
Take a look at what happened.
When Donald Trump was almost killed by an assassin's bullet, there was a chance he would command so much attention people would forget about Joe Biden. But as Mr. Trump got up and defiantly carried on, there was a striking contrast with a COVID-struck Mr. Biden pausing his campaign and making his weary way home. The president's fate was sealed when he stepped onto this stage. It was him who'd called for an early debate to try to reset the race. yet his performance forced him to exit the election. Sarah Smith, BBC News, Washington.
That's not the right way to go.
Let's talk now to Frank Lutz, who's a pollster and political consultant. He's in Washington, D.C. for us. Frank, good to have you with us. Good morning to you. We've just looked through some of Joe Biden's recent appearances there, and given what we saw, this was inevitable, wasn't it, that he had to drop out of the race?
At a certain point, these spills and stumbles, as you called them, called into question his age, his capability, and remember, it's not just a vote for November of 2024. You're giving him 4 more years to January of 2029. And too many Americans and other Democratic leaders, quite frankly, said, we can't do this. It just will not work. Biden's numbers began to deteriorate. Donald Trump opened up a lead in the key swing states. And the Democrats were afraid that they were going to lose not just the presidency, but the House and the Senate as well. So they acted, and eventually there was so much pressure that he had to step aside.
Yeah, that's the point, isn't it? You know, he was saying, look, I've got it in me. I can do the next 4 years. He talked about his record in his first term. But the question was, it wasn't about the first term. It was whether he was fit and capable of doing 4 more years in one of the most demanding jobs in the world.
That's correct. Americans are looking for someone who has a detailed plan of action. And the fact is, action and Joe Biden do not seem to fall in the same sentence. It's not that they like Donald Trump, and it's not that they dislike Joe Biden. It's that it simply thought that he was incapable and unable to carry forward for the next 4.5 years, and eventually he got the message.
So he has now thrown his support, his weight behind the candidacy of Kamala Harris. What do the numbers tell us about how she would fare against Donald Trump in November?
Her numbers are about the same as Joe Biden's right now, but she's got more upside. Here's what's interesting. She's got more upside and more downside. Her candidacy in 2020 ended in failure. She did not even make it to the first primary. She was chosen by Biden, and that gave her a second wind. Her numbers as vice president, she's been the most unpopular vice president since Dan Quayle. And yet, over the last few weeks, her numbers have slowly gone up higher and higher to now where she's at least equal to where Joe Biden would have been. And she's going to give Donald Trump a real run for his money. She's got energy, she's got excitement. And here's what's key. Before, it was Joe Biden who was the old candidate. Now it's Donald Trump.
Is it fair to say she has been somewhat invisible in recent years? You know, you might have hoped, and the Democratic Party might have hoped, that there would be a candidate who had their own projects, who had their own agenda, was able to carve out a niche of their own and then step up to the top job if something like this did play out. But she's not been that visible on the campaign trail. And is it fair to say a lot of voters don't know who she is or what she stands for?
They know who she is, but they don't know what she stands for. She was given the role of immigration. And that's one of the 2 key issues in America, immigration and inflation. And on both of those, Donald Trump has a significant lead over the Democrats. The difference is that she will excite young women under age 30 who are completely turned off by Joe Biden. She brings out an African-American vote that was not really impressed with the current administration. And she can be a good debater, although she wasn't that effective in 2020. What it does do is that it throws the election in some doubt. I was quoted several days ago in the Times of London as saying that the election was Trump's to lose unless there was some really remarkable incident. Well, guess what? This is a remarkable incident. And it's unclear at this point just how high she can climb. But she has brought interest into the Democratic Party, and they have raised more money in the last 24 hours than any 24-hour period in 2024. The energy and excitement does not just translate to candidates, it also translates to donors. And in America, donations are essential to winning elections.
Frank, it's good to have you with us this morning. Thank you, Frank Lutz, their pollster and political consultant. Thank you.
Thank you.